Lakewood Planning Commission to order for a regular meeting on April 2nd, 2025 at 7 o'clock. Mr. Medina, please call the roll.
Commissioner Buckley, Commissioner Furman,
Here.
Commissioner Greblionis,
Here.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer,
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner Overall,
Here.
and Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. As this is the first seating of the commission for the year, we have a lot of business to take care of today in addition to a public hearing. I just want to make a couple of notes before we get to the next agenda item. I know that I speak for the entire commission when we express both our gratitude for your service, Commissioner Furman, and congratulations on your elevation to City Council. So we'll be working for you in a very short period of time. So thank you very much for all of your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
The second thing I want to mention is that Commissioner Buckley is excused today. He is ill and missing a meeting. For those of you that know Commissioner Buckley, that will kill him. He hates to miss a meeting, so he is here, I'm sure, in spirit. And then the final thing, and actually I meant to ask you, Commissioner Williams, if you wanted to introduce yourself, but I wanted to welcome you as our newest commissioner. You're going to be a great addition. You are not obligated to say anything, but if you wanted to introduce yourself to the commission and the public, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to thank the Academy for this. My name is Topher Williams. I live in Ward 4 in the Green Mountain area. I'm a small business owner and kind of local planning nerd, I think. You may agree with that, I think. And I'm really thrilled to be here. So thank you for the opportunity to serve my community.
And thank you. So the first order of business, item 3, is the election of officers pursuant to section 2.6 of our rules. Mr. Medina, I would ask you to preside on the election of chair.
Are there any nominations for chair?
I nominate Commissioner Kolkmeyer.
Okay. Are there any more nominations? Okay. I'm going to take a roll of commissioners just on a yes or no for Commissioner Kolkmeyer as chair. All right. Commissioner Buckley, Commissioner Furman,
Yes.
Commissioner Greblionis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Overall,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
All right. I'll hand it back to the newly elected chair.
Thank you very much. Our next order of business is the election of vice chair. I have spoken with Commissioner Buckley, and he has asked for the commission to consider him continuing in the role of vice chair, so I would nominate Commissioner Buckley to be vice chair. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, nominations are closed. He's already indicated he's willing to serve. Mr. Medina, if you could call the roll.
Commissioner Furman,
Yes.
Commissioner Greblionis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Overall,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Buckley is elected as vice chair. Next, we elect our secretary. I would like to nominate Commissioner O'Neill to be secretary. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, nominations are closed. If you could call the roll, please.
Commissioner Furman,
Yes.
Commissioner Greblionis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Overall,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all, commissioners. We have our new officers seated. Item 4 on the agenda, Special Use 24-0002, 675 Kipling Street, a request for a special use permit. Just as a reminder to all commissioners and to the public and the applicant and staff as well, our process under our rules is that we call the case, the applicant presents their application, then we have the staff provide their recommendation. Thank you. And then we have comments from anyone who is a member of the public that wishes to comment on the case. And I will also note that we have received a number of comments on Lakewood Speaks and also emails that were submitted to staff that staff has provided us. All of that will be made a part of the record. I would ask at this point, everyone in the room who anticipates speaking on this matter, if you could rise and have the clerk swear or ask you to affirm your truthfulness.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you all. I hope you appreciate that it's easier to do that as a group rather than individually, but I think we're all set. So with that, I would call the applicants forward to present the application.
While he's working that out, can I control it from here?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Good evening. My name is Shelby Madrid with Kimley Horn. Do I have to state my address?
Sure.
All right, 6200 South Syracuse Way, Greenwood Village, Colorado. We are here tonight to share some information related to our application for a quick trip fuel station, as you very well may know, located at 675 Kipling Street in Lakewood, Colorado. And today is April 2nd. Sorry, the font changed from our presentation. This is throwing me off a little. So with us today, Quick Trip, we have Jessica Glavis and Craig Romwell, who you may hear from. You have myself, Shelby Madrid, and our traffic engineer, Jeff Plank. And with FGMC, we have David.
Sorry, Shelby. Could you please talk into the mic a little bit more? Sorry about that. Thank you.
See if I can figure this out. All right. So just want to give you a quick introduction to Quick Trip. I apologize for this being challenging to read. The purpose for Quick Trip's purpose is to provide opportunities for their employees to grow and succeed. It is a privately owned and operated by family and employees. It was founded in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1958. Quick Trip strives to be a top-tier convenience store emphasizing cleanliness and customer service, not just a fuel station. Each location has a full-service kitchen with a variety of made-to-order fresh food, which if you've been in one, you might know this. In its history, Quick Trip, fun fact, has never laid off a single employee in the history of the company. And Quick Trip does contribute 5% of its profits to charitable organizations in the local communities that it operates in. Quick timeline summary. I won't go through all the details on this. Just wanted to emphasize that almost a year ago today, we had our first 2 years ago today, I apologize. We had our first neighborhood meeting for this project. We started our application back in February 2023, and now we are today, April 2nd, 2025. The site location, which a lot of you may know, is in the northwest corner of Kipling Street and West 6th Avenue frontage road. As it exists today, the site is a vacant lot. It is currently fenced off, though there is a little bit of a population accumulating on the site that we're trying to manage. The site plan. So wanted to walk you through a few of the elements on the site that have changed since the last time you may have seen this application. So this is Plan North, so north is to the top of the screen. We have 6th Avenue frontage road to the south and Kipling to the plan right. What we have done on this site, we'll start on the south. We've added a designated right turn lane into the site off of 6th Avenue frontage road. This is an added safety measure for the flow of traffic. We've also added a handful of EV parking stalls to the left of the proposed structure. You can see, it's hard to read on the screen, but the conglomerate of EV parking stalls. The fuel canopy where you'd fuel up your vehicle is to the north of the structure. In the top left corner of the site, we have a designated plaza area. It's not programmed yet, but the intent is to be a plaza space for community seating, outdoor areas. We're still working on what that programming might look like. And then along the frontage road, you'll see more landscape area, and this is our proposed detention facility. The access on this site that is directly to Kipling is a right in and right out only. And furthermore, you can see it is a right in, right out. There's two comparison photos that you see on this screen here. The first of which on the top is from August 2023. You'll see the site highlighted. There is no center median in Kipling. Since August of 2023, when this project was starting, now March 2025, there is an added median that will prohibit any movement other than a right in, right out onto Kipling from our site. Diving into a little bit of traffic discussion that we wanted to highlight. Since the start of this project, like I mentioned, the city has installed a raised median along Kipling Street. This median does restrict that right in, right out access, and it also increases public safety by providing a pedestrian refuge. It is our understanding that the city does have plans to continue this median once funding becomes available north to create a continuous median up Kipling for further safety and pedestrian refuge. Some other data we wanted to highlight is the city did ask us sometime last year to perform a crash data analysis. So we dated our crash data analysis back to 2007. And in that crash data, what we found, and this is summarizing this first bullet point for y'all, is that the crash data at the intersection of 6th Avenue Frontage Road and Kipling was more than 4 times lower than the average crash at other intersections in the city of Lakewood, which surprised us, of course, but surprised us, but it was good data to have. And furthermore, part of that crash data, we analyzed what the crash data looked like when there was and was not commercial development up and near this corridor on this corner, and there was no increased trend of crashes when there was previously commercial uses at the project site. We do have our traffic engineer here later. If there are questions, we'll bring Jeff up and he can further answer those questions with more quantifiable data for you. What we did want to highlight, because our site is subject to a special use permit, that's why we're here, is how our building architecture and the site does meet Articles 4 through 7 of this special use criteria. So as you can see on this screen, our building has 360-degree architecture with the building transparency and materials meeting all of the criteria in Articles 4 through 7. Additionally, our canopy does match the building materials, as does the canopy over the EV structures. So I'm going to bring up David. He's going to go through some of the applicable criteria in more detail for the special use permit.
Just on the left. Great. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of Planning Commission. My name is David Foster. I'm Land Use Counsel to Quick Trip. Address is 360 South Garfield, Denver, 80209. Appreciate your time tonight. The first thing I'd like to do is also thank staff who's also been at this project for a few years. And of course, you have their staff report that was reviewed, and as you know, they've already identified a recommendation of approval, which I'm sure staff will get into in a short bit. The other element that I just wanted to address is section 17.2.4, which are the special use review guidelines and the criteria under 17.242, which is the review criteria. Unlike Mr. Furman, who is now going on to the City Council, the job tonight isn't as a board sitting as a council and making a zoning determination, and you know that. It is because this use that we're seeking to have approved tonight as a special use was already identified by the City Council as an approvable use, as a special use, meeting special review criteria. And so while I know that there will be issues raised throughout the course of the evening that speak to whether or not a gas station should be here, the question is really whether or not the review criteria are met. And it isn't a question of whether or not this should be zoned to allow for a gas station. And we believe that these criteria, which are almost entirely objective, are met. And we will show that to you. And fortunately, we've already begun demonstrating just that to you, for you tonight. So starting with the first criteria. And you'll have to believe me that the font on our presentation looks nothing like the font that is in front of you. It is really peculiar, and I don't know why it is. And it is so hard to read. Nonetheless, the first criteria is that the proposed special use is consistent with the applicable supplemental standards set forth in Article 4 of this zoning ordinance. Article 4 is an article from the code that speaks to a question of where identified as a special use, and these are the supplemental standards, a fueling station shall be subject to the following, and so there's some heightened criteria. One is that the fueling station meets all of the site design requirements of 17763B. That's an objective determination, and the staff has reviewed it and found that it has. And the second is that there's a canopy provided to shield the fueling islands and fueling operations from precipitation. And again, that's an objective criteria. Staff has also reviewed this and found that it has. The third element is that the fueling station may not be located within 1,000 feet of another fueling station unless, and I know that there was a lot of time spent on this unless question a year or so ago, unless one of two conditions exist. The primary fuel type provided at the two stations is different, and we're speaking of a station across the street that's a Circle K, or B, traffic conditions such as a raised median, and that's an example of a traffic condition, prevent clear and simple access to a station on the opposite side of the road. And again, we're referring to the Circle K that is on the east side of Kipling. The first element is whether or not, and only one of these criteria need to be met. And so the first is that the primary fuel type provided the two stations is different. And here, what has been identified, which is different than the last application that many of you reviewed, is that the primary fuel source at the project is electricity, because there are 17 EV stations, charging stalls, and only 16 fuel pumps. And so the primary fuel type here is electricity and not fuel. And again, that's an objective determination, and so that becomes an objective criteria. The second is traffic conditions such as a raised median prevent clear and simple access to a station on the opposite side of the road. What was discussed at some length was how we are accessing between our proposed quick trip and the Circle K that exists on the other side of the road. Clear and simple access, in our estimation, has to be legal access. And so when you travel from Circle K to the quick trip, in order to go directly across the street, you are traveling over several double yellow lines, which is an illegal access movement, in order to get to the quick trip. And so the actual access that is clear and simple isn't within 1,000 feet at all. And we have that demonstrated in an exhibit that we can show you later. But frankly, this question of simple and clear access is also demonstrated in the fact that there have been a number of unfortunate fatalities of pedestrians going across and also of a motorcyclist in this particular area of Kipling. I think that clear and simple access is proven in an unfortunate way in this particular case, but yet it is only one of the elements that would need to be proved if in fact we didn't have the predominance of electricity at this site. The second criteria that needs to be met is that the proposed special use is consistent with the applicable dimensional and development standards set forth in Article 5. And here again, these are objective criteria that are met in the application and has been reviewed by staff. The next is that the proposed special use is consistent with the applicable design standards set forth in Articles 6 and 7 of the zoning ordinance. Again, these are objective review criteria that staff has found are met in this application and are met for your purposes in reviewing this application tonight. The fourth element is that the proposed special use is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted city plans. I appreciate Lakewood Speaks. It's actually a very unique system within the municipal area. Very few jurisdictions even contemplate doing something like that. So I'm under the impression that you have all had the opportunity to watch those presentations. We went to some great length in our presentation to speak to the three separate city codes, the city planning documents that this particular project meets. And without going into great detail, we identified that the comprehensive plan analysis is met. This property is located within a future activity area of city's land use vision map. And as, again, you've already heard in Lakewood Speaks, the property is located within the CR district, making it appropriate for a community activity. The property is also specifically located in the US 6 frontage road community activity area, which is intended to maintain the area as a viable community scale shopping and office district. A fueling station is a community activity use because it is located along Kipling, a major street, and will provide adequate vehicular and pedestrian access. The Quick Trip fueling station not only promotes the redevelopment of the property in the area, but provides options for fueling, EV charging, and fresh food shopping options inside the store. It also meets the Lakewood Moves, Chapter 6 of the comp plan, in that the project includes the construction of a new right-hand turn lane onto the property. It also includes enhancements to the sidewalk network and the Kipling Street right-of-way, enhancing the pedestrian network, and improves pedestrian safety along Kipling and the Kipling and 6th intersection. Project also includes a proposal to reconstruct the RTD bus stop adjacent to the site, which will support transit ridership and encourage multimodal transportation, a key goal of the comprehensive plan. Finally, it is consistent with the City of Lakewood's sustainability plan, dated 2015, in that the city has a sustainability plan in which a primary goal is to explore opportunities to develop and encourage development of alternative fuel infrastructure, including compressed natural gas and electric charging stations. The proposed project has 17 EV charging stalls. In addition, the project will provide full building electrification to eliminate natural gas usage. So this criterion, D, is met. Finally, E, the proposed special use will not substantially impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property. We go into quite a number of elements here as well, meeting the criteria. I know that many of you have probably been by this site. Honestly, it's a terrible site. It is not in good shape. And I know that there have been issues on that site for years, including with the neighbor directly to the north. But the project will not impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property. In fact, it improves the adjacent property. We have a letter from our adjacent neighbor in support of this project, as you have in your packet. Project will address and improve safety issues that are unrelated to the project. The project will provide cost sharing for public improvements within the Kipling Street right-of-way that will enhance and improve traffic safety. And so there are a number of other elements. Again, you've seen Lakewood Speaks. You've heard us go through a number of the elements, and in front of you, we identify some significant issues as well. At the end of the day, this particular site meets all of the criteria, most of the criteria being objective criteria for this special use. And we'll just flip through here so we can have good people on the screen to end. We're obviously available for questions as they will arise tonight, and obviously your staff has their report as well. Thank you very much.
I guarantee we will have questions. So if you wouldn't mind staying at the podium. I have questions for you. Actually, for Commissioner Williams, I don't know if this was part of orientation or not, but we do have a button that if you hit request for speak, it will show up here so I can see which commissioners are requesting recognition. I wanted to start because I was confused by a few things. The way you described the special use process didn't sound quite right in my experience as a zoning lawyer. Is a gas station buildable at this site as a matter of right?
It's a use that's approvable through a special use permit.
So what's the answer to my question? Is it approvable as a matter of right?
It's not a use by right. That's why we're here for a special use.
Exactly.
Correct.
It's not a use by right. So the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that you meet the exception.
That we have identified the additional criteria to have the approval. That is correct.
Okay.
We don't have to meet an exception. We just have to meet the criteria for the special use.
The city council passed an ordinance, and the ordinance says you can't have 2 fueling stations within 1,000 feet, right?
No, that's not what it says.
That's where it begins.
Okay.
And then it says that, and so as a matter of right, you're not allowed to have a gas station within 1,000 feet.
Unless.
Unless.
Right.
Right? If you're able to provide evidence that you meet the criteria, then a special use can be granted. But that's.
Must be granted.
Okay.
It's a shall.
So another thing you said was that these are essentially objective determinations and that the staff has made those determinations. You're not suggesting that the commission is bound by a staff decision. Isn't the only reason we have a public hearing is for the commission to exercise our discretion?
100%.
Okay.
You have discretion, but you also have a professional staff.
Indeed, and we appreciate them very much.
I'm sure.
Okay. I'm still not seeing any lights, so I'm going to go on. Let's first talk about 17.4.3.1 M3B. This is the clear and simple access issue. I was also a little confused in your materials that were presented and what was said again today and your comments, this notion of a continuation of application. I'm not prepared to talk about the previous application because it was denied, right? The only thing we're considering today is this application.
Correct.
Okay. So I wasn't sure what the reference is. Is there something we should be taking from that previous denial?
No.
Okay. So we're evaluating this on the current conditions, right? For traffic. So under this criteria, it's the current conditions.
Mr. Chair, you're going to use whatever you want to use to review, but it's the application that is presently in front of you. The existing conditions, is that what you're asking? What presently exists on the site? Are you speaking to the median?
Yeah, so the applicant has said there's a median and it's going to be extended in the future. That's the city's plan.
Well, I
You
don't know
heard-
that we
you-
said that tonight.
I
think
believe we all heard that.
Okay.
Okay, so we heard that, and this was, of course, and again, I'm not interested in relitigating the last one, but that, of course, was a major flaw in the presentation from your client previously, because the assertion was that you could meet the exception based upon changing the condition, and that, of course, is not right? It has to be the current conditions that you would be evaluated on. Does that make sense?
I understand that.
Okay.
And the conditions are not met based on the current.
And I get that. That's one of the
current
things
regulation.
I
Correct.
want to explore with you.
Great.
So the current conditions are if you're going northbound on Kipling.
From,
I'm
from
sorry?
where?
From south of the site.
Okay.
All right.
South of our site?
Yep.
Okay.
You're going northbound on Kipling at 6th Avenue. You can turn left in an existing left turn lane to get on the frontage road and get into your site. And you can also turn right directly into the Circle K.
From Kipling?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, maybe these questions aren't for you because you seem to.
I mean, are these going to be traffic engineering questions?
If there's someone else from the team that would like to answer the questions, that's fine.
You can turn left onto the frontage road. Correct.
Okay.
And you can turn right into Circle K. I mean, that's obvious.
Okay. If you're going south on Kipling, and again, I'm wondering if maybe someone else is the more appropriate person. Maybe we save questions that are specifically on the legal issues, because some of these factual questions we're just trying to get into the record.
Okay.
And if that's a difficulty for you, someone else maybe is better
Well,
at
go
answering
ahead and
those
ask
questions.
the question. We'll figure that out.
Okay. If you're going south on Kipling, you start north of your site, you have direct access in.
Correct.
To your site,
It's right in and right out.
right? And the issue on this question of clear and simple is turning on the question of the yellow line, right? And I heard your point, and I want to explore that a little bit more. That yellow line, not the median, because the median isn't there, but the yellow
The
line.
double yellow line, the two double yellow lines.
The two double yellow lines is something that prevents clear and simple access. And in your online presentations we reviewed, there is an explanation you give about the definitions of clear and simple. And I guess the question is, and I have to confess, I'm a retired statutory lawyer, so statutory interpretation is all I did. We have to give effect to every word in the ordinance, don't we?
Go ahead.
Well, do you disagree?
It depends on the context, but
Okay,
go ahead and ask your question.
all right. So the phrase is not clear and simple. The phrase is prevent clear and simple. And prevent is just as important a word for us to interpret as clear and simple. We don't ignore clear and only look at simple, and we don't look at simple and ignore clear. It's and it's prevent. So one of the things we grappled with on the last time, and I guess you're asking us to grapple with it again, is how do we give full meaning to what the city council intended? And prevent indicated, I think, to the commission then, and still does to me, but I want to hear your reaction. Prevent means can't, as opposed to shouldn't. And something you said really, I thought was dead on, which is you should think of this as legal access. And see, as a drafter, that occurred to me that you're absolutely right. If city council had intended it to be legal access, that would have been the right word. So, and I'm just laying this out, and now I want to hear your thoughts.
You don't presume that when city council adopts their rules and regulations that they're adopting policies and rules that are, in fact, legal?
I don't think I said that at all. My point is that the word prevent
Right.
is one that needs to be interpreted. And they give us an example. They say, such as a raised median. A raised median is a physical obstacle, unlike a visual obstacle. So that's what I want your help on. Help me understand how the better interpretation of that phrase, prevent, should be understood not to be a physical obstacle. It should actually be a visual obstacle, and it should mean shouldn't rather than can't.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Well, I think that is entirely up to you as an individual planning commissioner to determine. If you think that council would have intended for illegal movements to make ease between two different facilities in order to accomplish this standard or to not accomplish this standard, that's, Mr. Chair, that's your prerogative. I have a hard time believing that when the city council, and I get a lot of guidance from how others interpret it. So let me give you those examples. In many other jurisdictions, they think of the standard on the same side of the street. Why? Because these are convenience retail facilities. They're not inconvenience retail facilities. And so when you're traveling southbound on Kipling and you're going to go access 6th Avenue, that's a really convenient location for those 6th Avenue users in order to access this particular facility. And so in other jurisdictions, the way they use this 1,000-foot standard is they use it on the same side of the street.
And do you have an example of a jurisdiction?
There are many jurisdictions. We had done some research. Broomfield, I think, uses 1,000-foot. I can, in the time that others will be speaking, I'll do that research, but I have a couple of other very clear examples of where other jurisdictions use it because it's a convenience question. And so 1,000 feet on the same side of a road makes a lot of sense. But when it's 1,000 feet separated by an illegal left-hand turn, that makes less sense in my estimation. Again, you and I are clearly going to differ on this fact, but I don't think that council likely intended to allow for that free movement, whether there's a physical barrier or not. There are 2 yellow lines that you are crossing, and that's an illegal movement.
Well, and I appreciate the point, and I will give that some thought. It still strikes me that there would have been a better way to draft it if that was in fact the intention. And I think we can't lose sight, and I'd be curious what you think about this. I mean, this particular ordinance was passed for one reason and one reason only, to separate gas stations. That's why they passed it. It's a ban on being within 1,000 feet unless you can meet the criteria. So I think that's probably the right context to think of it under, rather than this is an ordinance that wants to make sure we have as many gas stations as possible. It literally was designed to prevent gas stations being too close to each other. And there are a host of reasons for that. So that's
The good news for you is there are 2 different criteria to meet
True.
in this unless.
True. So let's go to that second one, if that's okay.
Right.
17.4.3.1 M3A, primary fuel. This is an interesting proposal, right? It's got 17 charging stations and 16 gas pumps. Does the company have any experience with this model? Is this something that you've rolled out other places? Do you have it, or is this the first one that you're proposing?
There are many quick trips that we're developing right now that have EV stations, as you can well imagine. It's not uncommon.
Are there any that have more EV charging opportunities than gas pumping opportunities?
Not to the best of my knowledge. I think this is our first.
Okay.
And we're excited about it.
Sure. So the criteria that you suggested, and I think we'll hear from staff that they're prepared to support that recommendation, is that the only metric that should be evaluated is the number of charging units versus the number of gas pumps. And I guess my question would be for, obviously for a company that is involved in selling electric fuel and selling petroleum fuel, are there any other metrics that you evaluated in suggesting that the primary fuel at this location is electricity?
We could only put more pumps for electric use than for petroleum. So if we are maxed out with 34 people seeking fuel at our site, more than half of those will be seeking electricity over petroleum.
More will have the opportunity to, but I guess the other metrics that I would have thought would be more front of mind for any fueling station, convenience store operation, would be a metric like revenues. All right? Is the primary fuel at this location going to be the sale in revenue of electricity or petroleum?
Well, again, it's statutory interpretation. And so we are focused on the number of opportunities being in excess of petroleum. We have more opportunities to sell electricity than we do petroleum.
Okay, walk me through that, because
We have 17 charging stations and only 16 fueling pumps.
Right, but every gas station, whoever appears before a planning board always is able to answer the simple question, how long do people typically spend at your location, right? They're gassing up, what's the average time that they spend there?
Well, the good news is, and I don't know if you've been to a Quick Trip, and if you haven't, you should give it a try because it's a very unique offering in the marketplace because they do have fresh food, made-to-order food, and so people actually do. In fact, my office just had a staff meeting at the Quick Trip at Monaco and Evans over lunch, sitting and having a meeting. So this is a place where people go and fuel up and eat, and so the time that it takes to charge your car, because I think that I'm sure that's where you're heading next, is satisfied by the time that it takes to eat. So people do spend, many people do spend a good quality time. Some people are in and out to get gas. Obviously, it's a gas station as well.
Yeah, and again, if there's somebody who actually knows more of the operational, it might be that they would be better to answer, but any business is going to know how much money are people going to spend at your business, how long are they going to stay there, what are they going to buy. You wouldn't just create this business without thinking about those things, right?
There has been a lot of thought that's
Okay.
gone into it.
So whoever is best to answer the question, how long on average does someone stay there to gas up?
Okay. I don't know if Craig or Jessica.
on that at the moment, but
Okay.
yeah,
You want to?
5 to 10 minutes perhaps.
You know, we can't have you testify from the seats, so if you could come up and introduce yourself.
Craig Romrell at 12,000 Washington Street, Thornton, Colorado 80241.
I'm sorry, your last name is?
Romrell,
Ron.
2 R's, 2 L's.
Great, thank you. So was that question understandable, that you're going to build a fueling station, you're going to have gas pumps, you're going to have a convenience store, you're going to have electricity. From a business point of view, you must have some idea what you hope people will do, how many will come, how long they will stay, how much they're going to gas up, how much they're going to charge, right? Can
Yeah,
you
you know,
kind of walk us through that?
I don't have the current stats on how long our average customer stays in Colorado, but yes, it is. I would estimate 5 to 10 minutes for someone fueling up, perhaps a little longer if they do choose to partake of some of the fresh food items.
And that sounds reasonable, but it begs the question, right? Is there anyone who charges their car for 5 or 10 minutes, regardless of the level of charger?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because the technology actually is improving substantially. It's gone a lot, improved significantly in the last few years, and so the charging times are getting reduced. So even the chargers that we've installed in several stations within the city of Denver, the charging times have been reduced. So I don't know if we can surmise, there might be people that actually use the charging, at nighttime, at some of those chargers more predominantly than we would have fuel customers, come during the night to the gas pumps, that type of thing.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I have 2 EVs myself.
Oh, do you?
Yes. So what's your data show? What do you think people are going to do?
Well, I tell you what, we have several partners on the EV front that will manage the EV part of this, and they're very interested in locating at this location because of the amount of customers that they believe will be at this location for the EV chargers.
Not very specific. I would have thought you'd have a little bit better idea of if the argument is 17 is a bigger number than 16.
Sure.
How many of these chargers will be used? What percentage of the time do you guess?
Well, EV adoption is increasing. I haven't seen the current stats for 2024, but they're out of the 5 million cars on the road, I think there were 5% in 2023 that were EV, and they expected that to jump, dramatically even in 2024 and this year as well. So I think that it is changing. I don't think it's static. I don't have a number of customers per day because, again, even with the chargers that we have installed at locations within Denver, it's been rapidly increasing the amount of charges. So it's not static. It is dynamic and changing.
So what is it now?
Per charger, I don't have that data with me. Per charger, yeah.
All right, so circling back, revenue, is there any estimate of what the revenue will be from gas versus electricity?
You can think about that. I will also say there is a significant investment in the infrastructure. As you undoubtedly know, 17 EV chargers are not inexpensive. So this is not form over substance. This is substance. This is an investment in the EV market and in a place where we think it makes sense. So, I don't know if there's a full analysis on the revenue.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm just curious, right? It's been suggested that number of pumps is the only metric. Revenue could be one. What about miles driven, right? Based on the amount of gas people buy, how many miles can they go on average? That's objective, you could certainly objectively determine that, versus the amount of charges that you're likely to do. Was that an analysis that you did? In terms of determining what the primary fuel was, number of miles driven from gas, number of miles driven from electricity?
I would not, I don't think so. I don't think we've done that
Okay.
analysis on that.
How about an analysis of the number of cars served? How many cars do you expect to serve at your 16 gas pumps versus the number of cars at your EV chargers?
Well, it's an investment that Quick Trip is making in 17 chargers, and so they've got to have a pretty good sense that those are going to be used.
But they haven't shared that with this
But I
team?
don't know why that is something that you need to know from from an ownership, a corporate business perspective, why that is something that you need to know.
The reason is
Yeah.
that the criteria you have to meet is proof, evidence, actual facts that the primary fuel will be electricity and not gas.
Right.
So I'm exploring how you got to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And whether or not you considered any other metrics besides number. Okay?
So I think you're speaking to, as the owner of 2 EV vehicles yourself, do you see that the primary fuel in 20 years, do you think will still be petroleum or do you think it will be EV?
I'm not in this business.
Yeah.
I don't do the research to determine.
There are some that suggest, there's plenty of resources out there to suggest that in 20 or 30 years, there will be, in areas of the country predominantly, we'll have more electric vehicles. So in an asset like this, I think we are built for the future to where we are serving both fuels from a predominant, perhaps on day one. you know, maybe we will have more EV chargers on day one than gas. But definitely in the future, it does appear that we will have more EV chargers for the longevity of
Right.
This is a 50, 60-year asset.
Sure, but you understand our problem. We're not allowed to analyze it the way you just described it, right?
Sure.
On day one, the primary fuel at this location has to be different than the primary fuel across the street. So you got to give me something that demonstrates that that's the primary fuel. Let me ask you this, because this one may be the easiest one for an energy provider. There's a mathematical formula that's been known forever that equates what 1 gallon of gas will produce equivalent to electricity. It is 33.7 kilowatt hours per gallon. You certainly have an estimate as to how many gallons of gas you're going to sell. That's why you pick 16 pumps and not 12 pumps. You must have some idea how much gas you're going to sell. What is that gallonage? Because then all you do is multiply it, and I'm not saying you have to use this as a metric, but it's a logical one, right? You multiply that times 33.7, and then is there any evidence that that number will come out of those electric chargers? That would be then scientifically the primary fuel. Does that make sense? And what would the number of gallons be?
Look, I understand that you are trying to prove our case, and I appreciate that. The real analysis here is that we have more opportunities on day one to fuel with electricity at any given moment than we do with petroleum on day one. We have more spots available on day one to use electricity than we do for petroleum. That is the question, that is the answer, and that's the analysis that we've done for this particular project.
So the logical follow-up question to that one, of course, and I appreciate that someone in Lakewood Speaks, or maybe it was additional materials handed to us, raised the same question I had thought about, which is certainly if the only thing that matters is 17 versus 16, those have to be apples and apples. They can't be apples and oranges, right? Do you have slow pumps and fast pumps with the gas, or are they all the same speed?
They're the same speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yet, you're proposing to have a minority of the 17 charging stations be a slower speed. And certainly you know, as folks that are suggesting creating this large EV charging station, a level 2 charger, the recommendation is that you charge from, when you get down to 20%, you charge up, and you should try to charge to 80%. Maybe people don't do that. Maybe they do 20 to 60%. On a level 2 charger, how long does that take? And again, you may have even better numbers, but obviously the DOT publishes numbers that make it very clear how long the average EV charges. So what's your level 2 charging time?
Good question. I don't have that data on me. Yeah.
Would it surprise you if a level 2 charger at the very fastest would charge you from 20 to 80% at 4 hours? Would that surprise you?
No, that would not surprise me.
Okay. So those are the majority of the chargers are 4 hours. And so you're asking us to say whether it's an hour charge, a 2-hour charge, a 3-hour charge, a 4-hour charge, that we should think of that charger as equivalent to a gas pump where I think previously it was indicated people are there less than 10 minutes. So help me understand that comparability.
I would just say that people charge just like they probably fill, and that's not always all the way up. And so I think that if somebody has to get home and they have 20 minutes and they need 10 additional miles of charge, they'll sit there for the limited amount of time to get there. I have an EV as well.
Okay.
I also have kids that don't have a lot of money, so that they sometimes only put $5 in their tank. So I have both of these on a daily basis. And so I've got an EV charger at home, but sometimes I'm out, and sometimes I just need a little bit more. And so I don't think everybody who's pulling into the station is going to sit there and necessarily fill up.
That makes sense to me. I guess I was kind of hoping, though, that you could say, we know our customer base, we know our location, we know what revenue, based on this investment, we've got to generate. We think 20% of the people will charge for 30 minutes or less. And that's great, because they're going to come in and they're going to buy hot dogs or whatever else. Can you give us any sort of analysis like that that indicates that there's comparability between these level 2 chargers and the gas pumps?
If that's what you're looking for, the answer is no.
Okay.
But I don't think that's what the standard is. But you're asking a question that again, and you're fully entitled to an opinion. As you undoubtedly know, you're the chair of the Planning Commission, so you have that prerogative. But I don't think that's necessarily the analysis that this requirement, nor the second requirement, require.
Okay. Those are the primary questions I had. It really is, I think, on the first issue, the thing I'm struggling with. So if you have further thoughts and want to give them, we're going to definitely give you that opportunity, and there may be other commissioners that have questions. But reading every word in the prevent, clear, and simple is something I need to hear more about. And what metrics make the most sense for determining what primary fuel means. Other commissioners, Commissioner O'Neill. Did you push yours? Commissioner O'Neill. Oh, maybe you're sitting in different places?
I don't have, my light doesn't light up.
It might be that Commissioner Furman has been wired to Commissioner O'Neill. So, Commissioner Furman.
This is a very straightforward and simple one, but coming off of all this, do you have a sense of the number of customers fueling in general that had come through here, not specific to either?
The number of customers on a daily basis?
Average day, yeah.
I don't have, some of that estimate is proprietary, right? So.
Oh, understood.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to ask you to just give a very wide ballpark, but I guess I just don't have a concept personally of how many people are coming in and out. But
we have a lot of food customers as well that just come strictly for food and other items.
okay.
Other questions from commissioners? Commissioner O'Neill.
Does my thing light up when I hit my button? Because it doesn't for me, just.
He is definitely wired to you. Would you like to buzz in?
Yes, I do have a question.
Commissioner O'Neill.
I guess my question is, I know you're still programming the northern side of the site for hangout space, or I'd be curious how that's being secured. I mean, given the northern neighbor, I know that I'm sure they're supportive of something being there, because that's always better than nothing, but we're usually better than nothing. It just seems like an opportunity for vandalism, crime, camping.
Yeah. I don't know if you have, let me start by saying that it is really important to Quick Trip to have safe and secure sites. I don't know how many cameras you're intending on this site, but it's usually about 35 or 40, 35 to 40 cameras, 24/7 surveilling every element. And I mean, these are all private. It's a privately owned company, so there are. This is the family that owns it, and they are ensuring safe and secure site. That's a tough neighbor, a real tough neighbor. And I think that some of the way in which it gets programmed, I mean, I know that they'd love to be able to put some space out there for people literally to sit and take their food and eat it while their car's being charged or being fueled, or just to come and eat. And so that'll be something that they'll have to continue to navigate. And hopefully, this is the kind of investment, a secure new investment and great operator that maybe changes the complexion of that side of the street. I mean, I don't know, I would hope everybody in this room right now wants that side of the street to be better.
Yeah. And then I just had one more question about the EV chargers. I think it's really important that we hear more data on that, if you can provide it, because it, more sometimes is just more, and it's not maybe serving the space in the way that it's intended to. 17 EV chargers seems like a lot when in most gas stations don't have any, older ones, and then you see maybe 3, and they're never full. I mean, when I see them, which is one person, it's not scientific, but I just think it doesn't feel meaningful the way that we're talking about it right now based on Chair's questions. So I'd really encourage more data and content there.
I would just suggest, though, too, since, as you suggested, it is new, I think rapidly increasing throughout the state right now, more chargers, and so the data is changing. And so there is a case study. I mean, the number of folks that are interested in locating EV chargers here, suggests that there is strong demand in the area and that there is, enough customer base to be served by that number of chargers.
Great.
So, but the type of data that I think that you and I and everybody's wanting, I don't think is quite out there yet because of the rapid increase of the adoption of EVs and so forth. And so, yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I just have a follow-up on that, and again, this is really designed to make sure that you do not leave here without feeling that you got a chance to make every argument you can. Usually we have the opposite circumstance, right? Someone comes in and says, hey, these are our projections. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the other thing. We know how this is going to all play out. It's unusual, I think, for us to hear, we don't know, or it's going to grow, or there's some trend. Usually it's us questioning and saying, is that realistic? So I guess I would just invite you. What is your boldest prediction based upon your analysis? You're going to put in 17 charging units, only 8 of which are the superchargers, which to me seem like, yeah, I could see the parallel to gas pumping. Someone would pop in there. I've done that for 15 or 20 minutes. I did it this very night with the level 3 chargers that we have at City Hall. What's your pitch that this is really the primary fuel that will bring people to this location? It is the primary fuel that you will dispense. It is the primary fuel that's going to make you money. It's the primary fuel. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Primary fuel is what we're asked to find.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're asking. I think that this process has given, because I've been a part of a lot of the conversations about rethinking how these facilities operate. You may know that Lakewood was even ahead of Denver in terms of making fuel stations even less able to be built. And so there is clearly a market that is moving towards fewer stations because, frankly, the older stations, I think we all want to see fewer of the older stations that have been built. I won't give names, but they weren't built great. They were also built long before a lot of the newer environmental standards were required. Which isn't an issue that anybody has brought up yet. I mean, obviously there were some people who brought that issue up online in terms of the environmental issues, which I'm happy to report that there are humongous environmental efforts in terms of the petroleum that is sold. But I think we're seeing a diminution in the number of stations, and we will continue to see those go away. The old stations will go away because because the new operators are offering something very unique to the market. And so I think it's going to be, if approved, one of the real flagship opportunities that will exist in this marketplace, and it would be excellent for it to exist here in Lakewood.
Commissioner Overall.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I have a comment, and that is that the primary fuel source I read to be a pretty blunt description. It does not say primary fuel source in terms of wattage provided, in terms of customers served, in terms of time stayed at each station. So I do interpret this to mean primary fuel source, possibly in the number of stations that are provided. I don't think we need to get there, though, because I also agree with your assessment that preventing clear and simple access does not include an illegal access. I cannot imagine that that is what the City Council considered clear and simple, unless it's in the context of an emergency clause. Preventing clear and simple access for an emergency vehicle perhaps could invite that interpretation, but I also find that hard to believe, and therefore I will not need additional information from you with regard to what a primary fuel source is.
Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Furman.
Yeah, I will, and maybe this will change your mind about telling me how many people you have visiting, because I wrestled with this last time, the whether or not the double yellow line prevented it or not. But I will note one of the things in the document we had about the public meetings talks about witnessing 224 prohibited movements in a 12-hour period. And obviously it's meant to make a different point, but that's a little bit why I was asking, because I was trying to get a sense with what percentage of people potentially turning in to any one of these gas stations might be doing it in a prohibited way and in a way that wasn't prevented by the double yellow line. And 224 may be a very small number, I just don't know. But the fact that that indicates for us how many people actually do that and aren't prevented from it was sort of stuck in my head, and I have a hard time letting that go. But not that I'm trying to convince you to tell me how many people go to your fueling stations, but that is a little bit why I was asking, and it tied into your comment as well.
If there are no further questions, appreciate that very much. Now I'd ask for the staff to present their report.
I'll spread apart. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kara Mueller, and I'm with the Development Assistance Division with the Sustainability and Community Development Department at the City of Lakewood. We just changed that name, so I always have to read it. The purpose of tonight's presentation, as you know, is for a special use permit for a fueling station at 675 Kipling Street, case number SU 24-0002. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for a fueling station at 675 Kipling Street. And as you know, this project is probably familiar to many of you, as well as some of the public that is here or watching, as there was a previous SUP request that was reviewed and denied by the Planning Commission on January 17th of 2024. This request this evening differs from the previous SUP request, as previously stated, and through some of the questions that have just transpired. It's proposed to meet the supplemental standards for Section 1743, 1M3 for a fueling station within 1,000 feet of another fueling station by providing a different primary fuel type. Electricity is proposed at this fueling station, where at the Circle K, it is gasoline for the primary fuel type and only fuel type. They are proposing 17 EV chargers, 8 of which are the superchargers, and 9 that are level 2 chargers. There are also 16 gasoline fuel pumps on the site. And although only one of the 2 supplemental standards provisions to the 1,000-foot spacing requirement must be satisfied to comply with the supplemental standards, Quick Trip also provided additional traffic analysis with information on the requisite traffic condition that could prevent clear and simple access to the Circle K, which is on the opposite side of the same street. Only one of these provisions is necessary to meet the supplemental standards. The rest of this presentation will focus on the differing fuel types. This is a property location and an aerial, and as you can see, the site is highlighted here in yellow. And you can see, as indicated on the site on the opposite side of Kipling Street, there is a Circle K gasoline fueling station at 722 Kipling Street. To the west of the site, there is a rather large solar installation. To the north, there is a motel. Across the street, there are several large office buildings south of the Circle K. The zoning on the site is commercial regional, CR, as well as the surrounding zoning on the northwest corner of Kipling and 6th Avenue. Directly across the street, where a lot of those large office buildings are, the zoning is mixed-use employment suburban, MES. This slide presented here does depict that 1,000-foot buffer. It also shows a much larger buffer, so we can kind of show what's in the vicinity. But there is one fueling station, as indicated previously, the Circle K within that 1,000 feet. This is a depiction of the conceptual land use plan that was submitted as a part of the development to show that it could meet the supplemental standards and provisions of the code requirements for the special use permit. The applicant is proposing to redevelop this 2.65 acre site to accommodate fueling station and restaurant to-go kitchen use. The proposed site development will include the removal of all of the existing asphalt and then the subsequent redevelopment of the site in accordance with all of the applicable development standards and city ordinances. The slide presented here does depict that conceptual land use plan, and on that you can see details such as the convenience store here in mustard, I think that color is. We have some access points, one directly to Kipling, which will remain. You can see here on the drawing there is an existing raised median that has been built, and the indication of this blue line just shows that you would prohibit any left-out turns or left-in turn movements due to the location and positioning of this right-in, right-out only access point. On the 6th Avenue frontage road, it would be required if there is access to the frontage road that there be a deceleration lane as indicated here with red, yellow. As previously spoken about, there is a proposal for a plaza space and connectivity between the motel site and this fueling station site, and that would be in the northwest corner. There are 2 fueling canopies, which will prevent precipitation. The one directly to the west of the convenience store is the 17 EV chargers. Directly to the north is the 16 fueling pumps. This slide depicts the SUP process prescribed by Article 2 of the Lakewood zoning ordinance. It begins with the pre-planning application. That application was submitted on May 20th of 2024. It's followed by a required neighborhood meeting prior to any formal submittals, so we can hear from citizens and stakeholders. That was held on June 18th of 2024, followed by a subsequent formal application. That was on July 11th of 2024. Staff then does review the report and goes back and forth with comments. That happened between July of 2024 and February of this year. And then here we are, although that date has not been changed, I apologize. That should be April 2nd for the hearing this evening. As previously stated, there was a neighborhood meeting held on June 18th, and we had 10 attendants. The attendees at the neighborhood meeting voiced concern over the proposed access point to the West Avenue frontage road, vehicles exiting the 6th Avenue westbound off-ramp and crossing over several lanes of traffic to access the 6th Avenue frontage road at that left turn lane pocket, and overall traffic and safety concerns. Questions about land use, as well as the quantity of fueling stations, spacing of fueling station, were also voiced. It is important to note that in the comments coming back from the neighborhood meeting, as well as from the traffic study that was provided, several of these items have been talked about and are in the staff report. In reviewing the traffic information and provided accident history since January 2024, the city has recognized there is a safety concern with the median that is south of West 8th Avenue, and they will be looking at, or the city will be looking at constructing an extension of that median in the future. There is no specific timing on that, but we do recognize that with the safety concern, that does need to be addressed. A decel lane will be required if there is any proposal for access to the 6th Avenue frontage road, and that would need to be developed, obviously, as part of any development there. And that would be by the developer. Installing a raised median along Kipling Street between the outside northbound lane, through lane, and the northbound receiving lane from 6th Avenue. That is not triggered by this development and therefore will not be required as some of those public improvements. This slide depicts the special use permit review criteria, so we'll go over these. Number 1, satisfy the supplemental standards of Article 4. Electricity be the primary fuel type. This differs from the gasoline at the fueling station within 1,000 feet on the opposite side of the street. Canopies will be provided. Architecture and screening requirements will be met, which is more specifically covered on the next slide. Satisfy the applicable dimensional and development standards of Article 5. And number 3 as well, satisfy applicable design standards of Article 7. This fueling station will meet the applicable Article 5 and 7 dimensional development and design standards and all other zoning and regulatory standards of the city. These will be reviewed for compliance with the major site plan review if the SUP is approved. Number 4, consistency with the comprehensive plan and other citywide plans. As previously stated by the applicant and in the staff report, this proposed fueling station site is to the east of the US 6 Frontage Road Community Activity Area. Those activity areas throughout the comp plan are identified in the comprehensive plan to be planned and zoned primarily for higher density employment and retail growth. The existing structures within this area and west of the subject property primarily are larger furniture stores, retailers, motor vehicle dealerships. This fueling station offers retail, restaurant, and convenience component that provides those amenities for the surrounding neighborhood and patrons of these larger retailers in the community activity area, which is to the west. The mix of these proposed services and site improvements is consistent and complementary with the future land use goals contained in the comprehensive plan. It's important to point out as well that connectivity between properties and along the frontage of the property is being proposed with sidewalk connections. The applicant is also proposing the electric vehicle charging stations. Those support Goal T2 of our sustainability plan. That's to foster sustainable transportation choices in Lakewood through objective and promoting alternative fuel vehicles and fuel efficiencies. They have also are committing to doing building electrification, which will help with greenhouse gas emissions. The fifth item will not substantially impair the use or development of the adjacent property or properties. They will be providing as well water quality detention, which would be required with any development on the site, as well as connections for pedestrians to maneuver around the site. And the fueling containers that are underground. They have more information on this, but it was provided that those definitely have alarms and are state-of-the-art for protection for any kind of newer fuel use versus some of the older sites that may exist today. And supplemental standards for a fueling station, we'll go through this pretty quickly. The fueling station meets all the site design requirements of Section 1763B and all other requirements of the zone district. Quickly, pump canopies are proposed. They're required as shown in the conceptual land use plan. The pump canopies cannot exceed 20 feet in height. They are being showed not to exceed 20 feet in height. Landscaping or a low screen wall to a minimum height of 42 inches up to 48 inches would be necessary to screen these canopies both from the 6th Avenue frontage road as well as from Kipling. Whether that be with a wall or with landscaping in the future, we will assure if this does get proposed that that is reviewed effectively through a major site plan. There are no service bay doors proposed. And again, there are pump canopies proposed for both fuel types. And the last one, which is the big item of discussion, the fueling station may not be located within 1,000 feet of another fueling station unless the primary fuel type provided that the two stations is different. That could be gasoline, natural gas, electric, possibly something different. Traffic conditions such as raised median prevent clear and simple access to a station on the opposite side of the road. The primary fuel type provided the two stations is different. We're looking at gasoline at 722 Kipling Street, and electric is proposed here at 675 Kipling. Notification is required for this hearing, and just to kind of get this on the record, written notice was sent to 46 tenants and owners of property and 5 registered neighborhood organizations. The distance requirement for the property owners and tenants is 300 feet. Neighborhood organizations is 1/4 mile. Notice signs were posted on the property. There were 4 posted, and they're posted every 300 feet. I believe there was an additional sign just to make sure that they were effectively visible for folks. Referral reviews were sent to utility providers and West Metro Fire Protection District. We did work out any comments that they may have. Summation of those comments are in the staff report, and no objections were received. I also want to point out that if this is approved, those same entities will get the major site plan application and engineering to review as well. So the findings of fact in order, the applicant is requesting approval of a special use permit. Notice requirements have been satisfied for this public hearing. The request was reviewed by appropriate referral agencies, and the proposed special use meets the applicable review criteria. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the findings of fact in order as presented in the staff report and approve case SU 240002. Thank you for your time and attention, and I, as well as other staff members, are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller.
Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? Oh, I'm sorry, I have a few. So there's a lot going on in this site, right? There's the convenience store, food operations, there's gas pumps, there's electrification, electric charging rather. What is the principal use of this site from a zoning perspective?
It's known as a fueling station.
So the principal use is a fueling station?
That is the request for a fueling station.
They're requesting a special use permit for a fueling station. But of course, under zoning, we first determine what a principal use is, because if we don't know what the principal use is, we can't figure out what the accessory use is. And that's important with electric charging, right? So what is the, from a staff perspective, what is the principal use?
Are you asking between the fueling types or for the convenience?
Right.
Because they're all in a definition that you can have a convenience store, a kiosk with a fueling station.
Right. So are you saying then that there are multiple principal uses and no accessory uses, or is there a principal use and the possibility of an accessory use, right? We always do this in a lot, right? We say the principal use is a single-family residential house. The ADU is an accessory to it. What is the principal use that's being proposed? Is it a convenience store?
I believe it is a fueling station.
Okay. So then you have to reconcile the definition of a fueling station, right? Because a fueling station under our code does not include any electric vehicle charging stations accessory to the primary use. So you're going to have to reconcile those two provisions for me, because electric fuel is treated differently than gas is for purposes of the principal use of the site and what is an accessory use. And that's a hurdle we got to get over, right?
Can you read it one more time to me? I don't have it in front of me.
Sure. So we have a clear understanding under the zoning code about what the principal use of any property is, right?
Sure.
We ought to be able to look at a property and say, that's an office building. And accessory to it is, who knows what?
A shed.
A shed. Then we have a definition of a fueling station. And a fueling station specifically does not include any electric charging that is accessory to the primary use of that. So explain to me your analysis on how that definition of a fueling station, which seems to exclude the possibility of electric charging accessory, with the notion of a fueling station being the primary use.
So what you're basically saying, and I'll repeat this back to you to make
Okay.
sure that I'm getting it, is that by definition, they say that it cannot be accessory to it, the EV chargers.
And again, staff, if you want to take some time and look at the code, but the definitions are the definitions, right? There's a definition of a fueling station. So you're saying a fueling station is the principal use. The definition of a fueling station says it does not include any electric charging that's accessory. So you
Doesn't
have to have a
include any
staff
of those.
analysis of what the principal use is, so that then we can ask, what's the accessory use, right?
And if I may,
Please.
Chair Kochmeyer, so not always, accessory uses are typically defined. You have to have a primary use to have an accessory.
Right.
In a zone district, you may have more than one principal use. So you could have a convenience store, and we wouldn't be here this evening. You could have a fueling station, and we would be here. Maybe it doesn't have a convenience store. I'm trying to think of something else that it could have a car wash and a fueling station. So yes, and it took me a minute to find the actual definition. So staff's interpretation is the charging stations are not accessory; they're a primary use as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's what I.
All right, so the primary use from staff's perspective is that it's an electric vehicle charging location.
Correct.
That's staff's interpretation.
Right. You could, so there could be three principal uses. So there's an electric vehicle charging station, there is a petroleum-based fueling station, and then you have the retail use. I'm not using convenience because in the code, it's retail.
Retail. Thank you. Ms. Mueller. So, the applicant has suggested that the primary fuel is electricity and not gasoline. And you said something that really stuck out of my mind. You said on the other side of the street it's a gas station, and here it's electric. But didn't you mean to say that both stations are selling gasoline, but your interpretation and the applicant's suggestion is that electricity is the primary fuel at this location? It's not that we ignore the gas at Quick Trip, right?
Yes, you would be correct.
Okay, so in your analysis, just walk me through it. Application comes in, and they say 17 chargers, 16 pumps. Our job, as it is for this commission, is to interpret what the city council meant when they said primary fuel is. What was your analysis? What did you look at? How did you evaluate this? What research was done that led you to the conclusion that the right way to interpret primary is 17 versus 16?
Right. So when the applicant came back with the alternative fuel proposal, we actually asked a lot of the questions that you asked. In the packet, they've provided an EV market study analysis. I won't go through all the questions that we asked. One of the things I conveyed to the applicant was number's not the best way to do this, right? If you come in and tell me that an EV station, based on your analysis and data and that you can find, is 12 stations, I can sit before this commission with the information that I need and defend that particular position that 12 chargers can be considered a primary use. You're actually selling electric fuel. We didn't get that analysis, and so we came back and had a discussion with legal. The zoning ordinance is unclear as to primary, and 17 is one more than 16. That could be considered primary as well. So that is kind of the staff analysis. We actually asked for additional information. We did get a kind of existing conditions. We didn't get the information we were looking for on how to actually support what's that primary use.
And that's, I appreciate that, I understand that. I guess the question for staff, though, is there another reasonable interpretation? It sounds like you thought there might be, if you asked those questions. Is it staff's opinion that there could be another reasonable way to interpret primary than simply 17 of these, 16 of those?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm curious, is there anywhere in our code, when we deal with fueling stations, that we make a differentiation based upon number of pumps? Is a 12-pump gas station treated differently than a 16-pump? Is that something we would routinely look at those numbers and say, yeah, that's a different thing than this thing?
No. So EV, right? So you come in and you put some chargers at an existing site, and they're few in number. I'm trying to think. Oh, here at the city, the primary use where we're sitting right now is office. We have EV chargers out front, both level 3 and level 2. They're not even uses, right? They're more, we looked at them as utility facilities. So whether they're an accessory use or a utility facility, those structures are out here and they weren't evaluated as the primary use, which would be office here at this location.
And I appreciate you saying that. I obviously did it very inartfully, but that's the obvious example, right? Those are either utilities, they're accessory. And if they're accessory, then it can't be a fueling station. And that's the exact circumstance of the building we're sitting in. So I appreciate you giving that as an example. And I also see that as a reasonable way to interpret this circumstance. But I understand that's not staff's position. Now, I guess the biggest question is, are you still comfortable arguing that, or agreeing, I guess, with their assertion, that 17 chargers with only a minority of those being the superchargers, that really is an apples-to-apples comparison, that those 17 electric chargers should all be thought of as comparable, equivalent, one-to-one with gas pumps?
We are looking at, that's not something for staff to figure out. In consultation with legal, we came up with a path forward, and then the Planning Commission either supports the staff recommendation or has a different interpretation.
And again, I apologize if this is laborious, but there are so many things that just pop up obviously, right? So if that's the conclusion, could they run 17 level 1 chargers at this site? And staff's view would be, yes, the primary fuel, because a level 1 charger is a receptacle in the wall that takes 24 hours or more. It's 17 orange electrical cords. Would that meet the primary fuel?
So we had this discussion, and as Paul or Mr. Rice had mentioned, we did ask for additional information, and I think the information that did come back was what we reviewed in taking a look at the number of superchargers versus level 2, but level 1 was not anything that we ever discussed as being able to be on the table. The question was, how many, tell us, provide us enough information so that we can determine, are we comfortable with the number of superchargers being provided versus potentially level 2 chargers, which have a different timing period. What they provided enough information to understand what the average number of those are in the area that kind of, lends a little bit more to some of those questions as to, do these function? Are they used? What's working elsewhere? We don't have a lot of data on it, but we did ask them to provide that information. We asked them to look at, you tell us, how many chargers need to be on this site. Yeah. What we didn't get was some of that additional information, but what we did get was the ability to, if there were vehicles in every single spot on this site at any given time, that electric would be then the primary source being used at that time.
Again, just based on the number of connections. And you see how big a deal this is, right? Because if the only thing that matters is someone says, I got 17 plugs and I got 16 pumps, why wouldn't the staff review the next application by saying 17 level 1 chargers? That's 17 electrical connections. So you want us to adopt a model that says there's only one way to interpret primary fuel: more connections, more plugs. Why wouldn't every gas station in town run 17 level 1 electrical cords out and say, we meet this criteria? That's why we need more than the number, I believe. And that's what I need from you, and that's what I was trying to get from the applicant. So the question is, if number is the only thing that matters, will we see a staff recommendation to approve every single gas station that comes in here that has one more level 1 EV charger than they have gas pumps? Because that cannot be what the City Council intended.
Again, we didn't look at level 1 chargers. When we looked at this, we had our sustainability team take a look at it, reflect upon the sustainability plan, and ask them to take a look at the information as far as number of chargers, type of chargers, and what would be reasonable to meet that request.
It's going to be your job, if an application gets filed for a special use for the next gas station that is right across the street from another gas station that wants to do this, and they're going to say, based on what the Planning Commission did if we were to approve this, we have established an interpretation that one more electric plug than gas pump meets this ordinance. Are you comfortable with that?
This was our first experience with this particular type of proposal. Is a little bit of a learning experience. If someone were to come in again with level one, essentially household plug-ins with fueling stations, I think we would reconsider that. We've got to go through and we're hoping that we come up with standards that address the different types of fuels and so forth. So we're taking, this one was a little bit of a surprise. We're taking a larger look at how we actually evaluate these.
Do you share my concern? Because someone could also come in with 17 level 2 chargers. If the only thing that matters to make it the primary fuel is they've got one more level 2 charger, is it going to be staff's recommendation that we approve that?
Right. Yes, we share that concern. That's why we requested the data, which wasn't made available to us.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I understand the staff assertion that if every single fueling station has a vehicle in it, you would have one more vehicle being serviced by electric than petroleum. My question is, do we have any understanding of, in the course of a 24-hour period or during business hours of operation, how many petroleum vehicles can be serviced each day versus electric vehicles each day? That's something that I'm not sure that I understand.
That would be a question for the applicant.
The applicant, do you have an understanding of that? I'm happy to clarify the question if that's helpful.
I think as I stated previously, it is a new and evolving use, obviously with the adoption of EVs. And so some of the data, as Commissioner O'Neill was asking for, is new. And so while there is, what I can say is there's a strong business case, for both fuel types. The numbers obviously is the customer base. And so as the customer base that, frequents Kipling and 6th Avenue there, I think they will find use in both fuels very strongly. So I again, from a future guesstimate, over a 40 to 50 year asset, I think you can make good arguments that both will get used very well, and a strong business case for both.
Follow up, if you don't mind. I totally understand that EVs are evolving and more people are getting them. What I'm trying to understand from this standpoint of primary use, right, is whether or not we should be looking at this from the primary use at one moment in time versus what happens over the course of a business day, right? And over the course of a business day do we have more vehicles being able to be serviced by petroleum versus electric? Not whether or not they will be, but what is the capacity to service electrical vehicles versus petroleum vehicles over the course of a business day? I understand that at one point, at one moment in time, you would have more electric vehicles than petroleum, but what I'm not sure I understand is the capacity to service each type of vehicle over the course of each day.
Sure, and I think that speaks again to the time of charging, and that's clearly a customer preference. Some, as spoken to, someone can put $5 worth of gas in their vehicle. Someone can charge for 5 minutes if they want, that type of thing. So it is a customer preference in terms of how long they choose to fill up or to charge. Yep.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for staff. When you mentioned that through your process of analyzing this, that you requested additional information regarding data, was that requested of the applicant or you requested it from who?
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. It would have been of the applicant.
Okay, that's what I thought you were referring to. And I think that's the piece that I'm struggling with while we're listening to the same applicant for a second time. I realize this is an evolving industry. It's likely to grow. Nothing's guaranteed there, but it's likely to grow. There's existing data that we could extrapolate from, and I think it's disappointing to have nothing. Just that, we know there'll be users. It feels like you have more charging stations, but the primary fuel, unfortunately or fortunately, is gas. So I think it just could result in, without data to analyze, the primary fuel is still gas because that's going to be used more. You just have more charging stations. And I think that without that data or without something, I'm really struggling to support the primariness of electricity. And I don't know if staff has any comment to that or if the applicant does, but it's not really a question as much as an observation. And it's just kind of disappointing because it would be nice to have, and I understand that you did request it. It would be nice to have that.
Apparently no comment. Commissioner Overall.
Thank you, Chair. This question is also for staff. Can one of you talk me through your thought process as you determined that, as you thought through the other possible, it's not an element, but the other alternative to the exception, which is preventing clear and simple access to the Circle K in this case?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Overall. So in looking at that, from the previous case, which they used that supplemental standard as far as additional information with this one, is that there are two elements. There is the existing median that prevents left in, left out if it were to be built, so that any northbound traffic would not be able to turn in to the Kipling Street access point. And we're talking about the same street when we're talking about the accents prevent clear and simple access. And then there is the double stripe median that is south of the median, south of 8th. That is located in front of the Circle K. It is not intended to be entered or turned unless it is safe to do so. And the additional traffic analysis shows that there have unfortunately been fatalities and that there have been several turns that occur within a period of time, 12 hours, I believe it was, 224 turns into that area. And in looking at that, it is not clear or simple. It is not known that you should make that turn. It's confusing. There are different traffic regulations that even conflict when looking at that position. So it's not clear nor simple.
Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Thank you very much. Now we will open it up for public testimony. We have a number of people who have signed up, and I'll call you in the order that you have signed up, and we'll have you come to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes, though for those of you that have been before the Planning Commission before, and even tonight, we do ask if you're willing to stay there and perhaps take questions from commissioners as well. You're not obligated to, but we think that it's useful to have more of a dialogue with people who come before us. We'll start with Mark Skelton.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Mark Skelton with Legacy 100 Real Estate Partners, located just across Kipling from the proposed location of the Quick Trip. I've officed there for 36 years, over which time I've witnessed multiple accidents at that intersection even with the crosswalk there and the crosswalk lights there, I've seen multiple pedestrians hit crossing that intersection. And from what I've heard tonight, there's been several fatalities. Kipling is, in my experience, is a challenge to commute every day. It is no longer a 40-mile-an-hour drive on Kipling Street. It's closer to 50 or 55 or 60. And with the location of this quick trip coming in on a left-hand turn off of Kipling onto the service road, all the traffic coming off of 6th Avenue that comes into this quick trip is going to have to cross those 2 lanes of traffic, which I've watched over the years as traffic comes in. They get hit at the light, they block Kipling totally, and people are still trying to go around them at 50 miles an hour. And that's where several of those accidents have happened. In addition, over the years, I've watched numerous people continue north instead of crossing over those 2 lanes. And even with the medians there, they go up and they flip a U-turn with the illegal turn with the double yellow lines, and they come back down to access the service road because they can't get over. And again, a lot of accidents. Since I only have 3 minutes, I'll cut to the chase. We have a high school just right up the road. And with me being in that office building for 36 years, that used to be a Total Petroleum prior to the Circle K, and I happened to have a Total Petroleum card, so I fueled up there all the time. And I would go in there in the morning or at noon and have to wait for the line of students to get in and out of the convenience store before I could even pay for my gas. So the high school there is a major concern that I have as far as watching the students cross Kipling over the years, and they don't go down and use crosswalks. They're 15, 16, 17 years old, and they have no fear of tomorrow. And so it would scare me to cross Kipling today after watching the number of people hit there. But my concern is this. Quick Trip is known for low gas prices, low fuel prices, great food, and a huge influx of people that they're going to pull off of Kipling on a right-hand turn in. They're going to pull off of 6th Avenue on a left-hand turn into the service road, or a U-turn coming off of northbound lanes on Kipling. Couple that with the high school students that are going to be drawn to Quick Trip because of their menu.
Your time is actually up, but I think you'll get some questions.
Okay.
But if you just want to give us a sentence or two to wrap up.
I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Thanks. Commissioner Overall?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak with us today. My understanding, and my husband is an athletics director and assistant principal at Lakewood High School. I spend a lot of time interacting with the kids with no fear of tomorrow. And also at that school, this Quick Trip would be on the same side as the high school, correct? They would not have to cross
No.
Kipling to get to them.
No, ma'am. This Quick Trip would be across Kipling on the other side of Kipling from the high school. So all those students are going to have to cross Kipling to get to Quick Trip. Now, if I was a student at Lakewood High School and I had the choice between Circle K and Quick Trip, especially with their menu and their lower gas prices, which they boast, I would be headed to Quick Trip, either in car or on foot. And that means crossing Kipling and the opportunity for a lot more fatal accidents.
I see. Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just one more question. Would your concerns, so it sounds like you're concerned about the students and you're concerned about illegal U-turns that people make already just to get to 6th. would your concern be eased if that median were to be extended?
No, ma'am. I believe those people are going to come off of 6th Avenue, and if they can't get over to hit the service road, they're going to go north on Kipling until they can find a place to pull a U-turn. Whether that median's there or they go up to 8th Avenue and pull it there, I believe that's what they're going to do. I was there this summer where they had, the owner of the property had multiple tree trimming trucks come in and park in that lot all summer long. And every time I came across there at 5 o'clock, those tree trimming trucks would come off of 6th Avenue from either direction, come north on Kipling, go up, pull a U-turn. I'm not talking about a passenger car. I'm talking about a commercial tree trimming truck with a trailer and pull a U-turn and come back down and pull into park. I believe that's the same thing that you'll get, only with who knows what.
Thank you. And so am I correct in understanding your position would be that no commercial use would be appropriate in that area?
I don't believe that at all. There were several restaurants there over the years, but they didn't create the traffic, number one, that Quick Trip is going to create, and they didn't create a convenience store atmosphere that draws the students from a high school. So I believe with low gas prices, when somebody sees a Quick Trip on this side of town coming off of 6th Avenue from either direction, that's where they're going to want to stop. So I believe that it has to do with the combination of the proposed usage of a fueling station or convenience station or both, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Baker.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. Pleasure to be in front of you again tonight. I'm speaking in opposition to the approval of the special use permit application. As you're well aware, a previous planning commission has already denied a similar application at the same location back in January of last year. Little has changed in the second application. At the same time, Quick Trip is currently suing the city over the last denial. The citizens of Lakewood have made it clear over the last several years that they are tired of multiple fueling stations packed into small geographic areas of our city because of the many valid concerns that you all have heard before. The City Council has recently responded to those concerns and changed the code in regard to future fuel station development. The Planning Commission has the opportunity to use their power of oversight to be responsive to the wishes of the citizens of Lakewood. I believe this is a case of the developer insisting that they have their way and trying to check all the boxes to the satisfaction of the planning department. However, with regard to this type of development, I urge the Planning Commission to exercise their jurisdiction and look at this particular project through the lens of common sense and the content of the comprehensive plan that supports ample reason for denial. I've had my office at 710 Kipling Street for over 30 years as well, and I'm looking forward to a meaningful, safe, and sustainable development across the street that will enhance the quality of life in this busy intersection of Lakewood.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Overall.
Thank you, Chair, and
Yes.
thank you, too, for coming again this evening to speak with us. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you just described, which is the incompatibility with the comprehensive plan? Which specific components do you believe are incompatible?
I was basing that on the fact that in the last denial, that was one of the main reasons that was given. I tried to find in the legal suit what the city's position was in supporting those conclusions from the last time. I unfortunately did not get a chance to read through those in detail. But I would say that some of the issues that do come up in the comprehensive plan regarding sustainability, safety, and so forth of the community are well addressed by the concerns that come about with this particular application.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Weisselbaum. Yeah. Well, I'm Herr Kochmeyer.
Move a little slow. Well, I'd like to address the comparison of gas pumps to especially level 2 chargers, but even superchargers. You have EVs, superchargers take at least 15, 20 minutes to fully charge to 80%. Takes 5 minutes to fill up at a gas station. So it would probably, to roughly match the throughput of a gas station, you'd need about 10 times more EV chargers than gas pumps for it to be the primary fuel. Charging takes significantly longer than filling a gas tank, so that the claim that this station will dispense more electricity than gas, from just a physical standpoint, it's impossible. It can't. There's no way, especially if they only have, 6 superchargers, I think. So I, too, have been at 710 Kipling for 41 years. I own the building across the street. When we had restaurants there, we didn't have that much traffic. I know these guys hope that they're going to get a ton of traffic in there, but it's going to create issues and more fatalities. Also, I don't know if anyone's examined the total number of crimes at convenience stores and gas stations, but typically the FBI, from their last study, said that the convenience stores were second on the top 10 list of places of business for crimes, and gas stations were 5th on the list, and a total number, 15% of violent crimes were performed at this type of operation. We're across the street. That's the last thing I want to see, a 24-hour gas station convenience store for those kind of crimes. So anyway, let's see what else. Oh, also, I provided for you a letter from Jeff Abate, and he's a electrical engineer who actually installs chargers for the federal government. And I don't know if you had an opportunity to read it, but he said essentially what I just said. In addition, there are far less long-distance EV drivers than local city EV drivers. The new gas station could have dozens of EV chargers, but the actual in practice, one gas pump would be used far more frequently than all the EV chargers. So for their contention that this is their primary fuel source, as a matter of physics, it's impossible. I won't talk about all the accidents I've seen over the years because I'm down to 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
You may have some questions. Commissioner Overall. Well, I do have one because, and first of all, one of the reasons people get frustrated when they come before us is I'm constantly telling them, we're really happy you came here, but some of what you're talking about is completely irrelevant.
Okay.
And crime is not a criteria, and it
Okay.
may be a good reason and something that a counselor in the future wants to legislate on. But that's not one of our criteria. But let me ask you this on the charger issue.
Okay.
A level 3 charger, in my experience, is, I think a good argument can be made that that is comparable to the gas station experience. I have used it in that way when it's the 350 megawatt charger. They have them at, places, and you go in and you shop at larger big box stores, for instance. If the applicant were to suggest 17 level 3 chargers, would you not agree that that would be comparable? Or do you think that chargers are never comparable to gas pumps?
I think at some point in the future, they may be comparable. But at this stage, no, it's still, have you used superchargers?
Mm-hmm.
And how long do they take? 20 minutes?
Well, it depends. I mean, I have done it for as short as 15 minutes if it's a 350 megawatt charger.
And what was the percentage that you got out of that?
You get another 15% or something.
So 15%.
Yeah.
Well, you can fill a gas tank to 100% in 5 minutes.
I understand.
So how could it be?
Yeah.
I mean, one gas pump could be the equivalent of 20 chargers. So especially the level twos.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr., is it Stortz?
I was going to speak, but all my points have been made.
Okay.
So I won't bore you.
Thank you. Mr. Livingston?
Just, just as a general reminder to members of the public, please state your name, address, and ward, please. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I'm David Livingston. I've worked on 710 Kipling for the last 40 years. And I've noticed so many accidents, even when there were the restaurants. Of course, it's probably less now, but I always see accidents coming off of 6th Avenue. A lot of times people are looking to merge over and they end up hitting people coming off the light. And I just think that will be worse now because a lot of people, which was already explained, will try to get off of 6th Avenue and enter the service road. And I think that will be a detriment. And then also, I think there will be a lot of U-turns off of Kipling going northbound. And so I think that's one of the major problems. I think the biggest problem, which Mark Skelton mentioned, was I think it's just very dangerous for the Lakewood high school kids because I see them cross now and they cross and I think they would continue to cross even more because of course the Quick Trip is going to have a lot more variety of food and drinks and things like that. And I'll be darned if they're going to come down to the service road crosswalk to get over there. They're going to cross probably right by the Circle K. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that's, if anything, that's the biggest drawback to that location. And I do agree that something should be built there because it is kind of an eyesore, but I don't think a gas station is what we need with there being 3 gas stations down on Kipling and Colfax, and then of course the Circle K. Also, I guess of course I know they're trying to do the primary 17 charging stations, which I think will get used maybe 10% of the time, and the other 90% will be for gas users. Thank you.
And I would just follow up. What are you basing that on? Is there some study or some experience you have that you could suggest we should consider in terms of that statement? You may be right, you may be wrong, but what are you relying upon?
I just think because of the timing that most people are just coming in for gas or to grab something and go. And not many people, I don't think, are interested in hanging out. I mean, somebody might come in there for lunch and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. But I think that it's going to be more of a in and out type of thing.
Okay. Commissioner Overall.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you also for taking time to come down. I'm now properly oriented as to what block we're on. I got a little switched up. So where you just said kids usually just cross right at the circle, would probably just cross right at the Circle K?
I'm thinking so. They usually kind of walk up the hill and cross, and that's also a little bit more dangerous because they're coming up a hill, so the traffic coming southbound is probably not going to have as good a visibility of these people crossing.
And isn't there a pedestrian crosswalk? It's just for pedestrians across that exact same path and closer to the school?
There is one down the hill closer to the school where there's a light at 8th Avenue. I don't believe there's an actual crosswalk between 8th Avenue and the frontage road.
I drive it every day, bringing lunch to my husband. And so my recollection is that there is a pedestrian crosswalk that's not attached to a traffic light, and that's where it's actually right across from where there's an abandoned, it used to be a gas station, or what was it that's now abandoned? And it's a big problem, you know, students in abandoned buildings, recipe for disaster. So right there is where there is an actual light, it's flashing, you know, you press a button and it flashes, and pedestrians can cross there, which is, again, closer to the entrance of the school. Unless you go out the front of the school, but you'd have to walk all the way around to get to the crosswalk that's on that map. Does that ease your concern at all?
No, and it could change, I guess. They would pick a different route. But I do believe when they're getting close to that location, I mean, they could save, you know, about maybe 200 feet if they cross, like at the entrance to 710 Kipling, where our office is. They could just cut across there and get in the driveway to be closer to the convenience store. And I doubt highly that many are going to go down to the corner.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to provide public comment? Does not appear so, so we will close the public comment portion of the hearing. This is a little unusual because we've given the applicant an opportunity to present. We've heard the staff recommendation. We've taken public comment. But the applicant has heard some of the concerns that and questions that have been raised. I guess I'm wondering if there's anything further that you would like to put in the record as it relates to this proposal, and there may be some follow-up questions after that. But I would just invite that opportunity.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has certainly been a healthy conversation tonight. I promised some language that I was going to find that I knew existed, so which lends a lot of credibility to the concept of the 1,000 feet on the same side of the road as opposed to across. It comes from Broomfield, Section 1734080, gasoline station requirements. Location and separation requirements. Gas stations established after the effective date of this ordinance shall be separated by a minimum distance of 1,000 feet, 0 inches, between a proposed gas station and any existing gas station, except that a maximum of 2 gas stations are permitted with less than 1,000 feet of separation at any single intersection of 2 roads, so long as the gas stations are not on the same side of the traveled street. Separation distance shall be measured in a straight line from the nearest property line of said gas station from property line to property line. So you had asked for an example of this notion of 1,000 feet, because I see separation issues in codes all the time, and understanding what the meaning is, what the rationale is, why a city council would have adopted something like that. And then I went back to the language, and I'm trying to get statutory a bit. I want to draw your attention to the language from the supplemental standards, and it starts with the fueling station. And we're talking about the fueling station, our proposed fueling station. I imagine you would agree with that. May not be located within 1,000 feet of another fueling station unless traffic conditions such as a raised median, but I think we would agree that that's just an example of a traffic condition, prevent clear and simple access to a station on the opposite side of the road. So if we were to pull up the map again of our proposed site, you'll notice that there is no ability to go turn left out of our site onto Kipling and across Kipling because we have a raised median. And so the only way to get to the Circle K across the street would be to exit all the way back down onto the frontage road at a light, come eastbound on the frontage road to Kipling, to a light, and then northbound on Kipling to ultimately make your right turn in to the Circle K. Did that make some sense?
Well,
That direction?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's been the staff's interpretation of what
I'm
that
not,
means. But
I understand, but
Yeah.
I'm just reading the language like you did before.
Mhm.
To, right?
So,
To.
so you think the exception is only applicable when you're moving from the Quick Trip to the Circle K?
I think that if we're going to have a statutory interpretation conversation, I think it is. I don't think that that's really ultimately what's intended, because we've spent a lot of time talking about access back over across, making a left turn over 2 yellow lines over. Kipling is a challenge to commute. That was a representation that was made by one of the members of the public tonight. That's not, that double yellow and an illegal left turn should prevent clear and simple access. But if we're just clearly reading the statutory language, it then requires over 1,300 feet from our site, transversing back up the frontage road, back up to Kipling, 2 lights, into the Circle K. So I promised you language from another jurisdiction that speaks to 1,000 feet and what's intended, and it really isn't intended to deal with an issue of stations across the street, because these are convenience retail again. We take over 76% of our traffic that's already on the street in that direction. That's how, and we've got our traffic engineer who can speak to that issue as well. And so the primary fuel question that you've grappled with a lot tonight, I want to kind of go back out about 30,000 feet and talk about what it is we're grappling with. We're grappling with a historic fueling station, gasoline only, that is now seeking to put in 17 EV chargers, never done before, in order to accommodate building a great facility, first time in their history since 1959, and build a great place and recognize the changed conditions that we all recognize and we all live in. And so a lot of time has been spent, and I think rightfully so. Well, is it okay that it's 17 versus 16? Is that really primary? It's primary in one way to define it. I certainly respect the way in which others have viewed this primary analysis, which is different than the way in which we've interpreted and the way in which your staff has interpreted. And that's the great part of this debate. But remember, we're still having a conversation about 17 EV chargers at a historic gas station facility in your city. And we've also heard the stories of great food and low prices. And so this sounds a lot like the kind of project that makes a lot of sense in a lot of different communities. And we meet these standards. Now, we've had a debate over the standards, but we believe that we meet both standards. But we don't need to meet both standards. We only need to meet one of the criteria, as you know. Mm-hmm. And so happy to bring up our traffic engineer to go through any additional analysis as it relates to this awful left turn. It's an awful left turn. It's an awful road. You had most of the folks in the community already speak to that. Well, there's our traffic engineer. I don't know if there are any additional questions, or Jeff, did you have?
Well, before you step away, though, I just, and I always appreciate a good argument. I think the argument, though, about reading it, the simple access to, there's a word missing in order to reach your interpretation. It has to be from to. So this is clearly the traffic going down the street not being able to get clear access to the other side. This is not designed to prevent getting from the Quick Trip to the Circle K, right? It would have to have the word from this site to that
No,
site.
I disagree. I think actually that if we're reading this from just the plain language of the code, the fueling station, because you have to start with the language in 3, the fueling station.
Right.
Okay? And that's the project. It's got to be the project. The fueling station is what you're reviewing.
Yeah.
It's the criteria that you're applying. That's the fueling station. That's our fueling station. The fueling station may not be located. That's a new location. That's a new facility.
Right.
So that has to be the from. Well, it has to be. I mean, there's no other way to read that. I'm open to this notion that the clear and simple access may go both ways, because I'm not entirely sure that a city council was probably thinking one way only,
Right.
but I'm more sure that a city council wasn't thinking make a couple of illegal turns in an unsafe condition.
One more follow-up question, because this really is, I mean, you're absolutely right. This is the first time. You're asking us to reach an interpretation we've never reached before. Do you believe that if your client was only proposing 17 level 2 chargers, that because it's 17 and not 16, you meet is that what you would argue?
That isn't what I'd argue, and that's
Okay.
not why we made that proposal. That's
Okay.
not why we made the proposal for just 17 extension cords.
So
we
what-
felt that it's a fair question. We felt that there needed to be a certain level of expediency with moving cars in and out and not having them sit for too long to get fueled up. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't use it as frequently.
So what is the rule that you are asking us to adopt today and that we should be comfortable adopting on every single gas station that has electric chargers coming in the future?
Well, the good news is you're not going to have to approve too many more gas stations in Lakewood. But having said that, the reality is we're dealing with a circumstance where it's a comparative analysis. So we're comparing ourselves to the Circle K across the street, the old dilapidated kind of crummy rundown facility versus this facility. I mean, you could almost make the argument that our primary use, our primary fuel is entirely different than what they're doing, because we have both petroleum and electricity, even if they're in equal amounts, which is different than what is going on across the street. You could make that argument. I'm not making that argument because I think that would maybe be a bit of a stretch, but you're asking for how am I going to analyze this in the future if I have to analyze this in the future? And I think that you would do it by a comparative analysis of what exists, what the other facility is. And in this particular case, I mean, again, how cool is it that we're sitting here in Lakewood right now talking about 17 EV chargers at a gas station? I think that's cool in 2025. And I think it's a great opportunity, and I think it meets the code.
Go ahead. There's additional comments you want to make related to traffic?
Yeah, I was going to go back to the clear and simple access. But
It's entirely up to you, but if you are going to speak into the mic, please.
Jeff Plank, Kimley Horn, helped prepare the traffic study. And so I just want to speak on the traffic condition of a gas station being 1,000 feet from another gas station, and the condition of demonstrating that clear and simple access is prevented by law. And so a left turn lane is clear and simple for entering a site. A double yellow striping in the center median is not clear and simple for entering a site. A median opening is not clear and simple for exiting a site by a left turn. A median opening is clear and simple for exiting a site by left turn. A median closure by double yellow striping is not clear and simple for exiting a site by left turn. So a double yellow striping does not prevent illegal maneuvers, but it does prevent clear and simple access. It's not clear to enter the site, and it is not simple to enter the site. And brought up earlier by Commissioner Furman, the 224 illegal maneuvers observed in a 12-hour period. They were southbound left turn movements, exiting left turn movements, and observed U-turns. That demonstrates the demand for needing clear and simple access southbound by right turn movements for entering a fuel station and convenience store. There were 3 fatalities by pedestrians trying to cross from the hotel to the Circle K. Do you think those 3 fatalities would have occurred if Quick Trip was there today? They would have stayed on the same side of the street. That shows there's demand for clear and simple access southbound and for the west side of the street. There has also been a recent fatality that wasn't even in our traffic study because it was so recent, with a motorcycle, southbound left turn maneuver, illegal, struck, fatality. If there was Quick Trip on the west side, there would have been demand for going to Quick Trip. 4 fatalities would not have occurred. How many fatalities will it take until you realize there's demand for convenience and gas on the west side of Kipling, providing clear and simple access with southbound maneuvers?
Thank you. Any further questions? Commissioner Overall, did you have yours on, or? No. Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I'm curious, can you help me understand, of the 224 illegal maneuvers, how many of them, do we know how many of them were attempting to enter the Circle K versus, say, make a U-turn or do some other maneuver? I'm curious how many of those illegal maneuvers were associated with the gas station there specifically. Do we have that information?
Yep. There were 60 southbound left maneuvers in entering the site, 134 westbound left maneuvers exiting the site, and 30 southbound and northbound U-turns.
Okay, so it sounds like the majority then of those would be.
We only evaluated to and from the Circle K and the U-turns.
So one more follow-up question then. My understanding then that there were no illegal maneuvers that were not associated with the gas station, or you just didn't count any illegal maneuvers that were not associated with the gas station?
Say that one more time.
Sorry, that was a terrible question. Am I understanding that the 224 illegal maneuvers that you counted, did you only count maneuvers associated with the gas station, or is that would be the, and then you didn't count any illegal maneuvers that weren't associated with the gas station, or is that total illegal maneuvers and they were all associated with the gas station?
Just with the gas station.
Got it.
So there may be illegal maneuvers occurring elsewhere. We only quantified immediately adjacent to document the demand for clear and simple access southbound.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I can address other concerns. I know the hot topic is this clear and simple access, but the neighbor concerns with crash data, crash trends, safety, I can also touch on that, but I think leaving it at the clear and simple is where we need to be.
Okay. Thank you.
But I'm happy to do that.
Sure. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you. So I think my question is, what about building the Quick Trip is going to prevent illegal maneuvers? Because I drive Kipling all the time as well, every day. That's just what people are doing. It's habitual, it's easier, and it's just happening. So
if you are traveling southbound on Kipling, there is a much less demand to go to Circle K than make it right in. You're going to go to the most convenient one. I think Jess stated it last time that they're okay with just getting southbound traffic. Let the northbound traffic go to Circle K, let the southbound traffic go to Quick Trip. And so you're going to go to whatever the easier maneuver is. There may be some people that have a preference to one or the other, but a lot of the times it's just going to be the easier maneuver. And one more thing I didn't touch on, it's already been discussed, but it's reiterated, that Circle K will not be able to get access southbound because of these fatalities. The city has initiated a project to extend that median so that it is physically prevented instead of being strike prevented today by law.
Right.
So there will be that demand because of these fatalities. And the median will be constructed.
As is so often the case,
Raised
just a
median.
second, so often the case on that very point, that sounds like a good argument, but you know that cannot be the basis upon which we make a decision. It's got to be the current conditions, not a future expected. It really begs the question, should this project simply be submitted at a time when the thing you're saying is going to happen that'll actually prevent it actually happens?
I am still 100% behind clear and simple access, that it is based on illegal maneuvers.
Okay. Appreciate that. Did you have?
Will you just, for the record, just give your qualifications as a traffic engineer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm professionally licensed in the state of Arizona and Colorado as a civil engineer.
For how long?
In Colorado, it's been 8 years. In Arizona, was 5.5 years. Well, I was only licensed 1.5 years. You have to wait 4 years to get your license, but approaching 14 years of experience.
Thank you. Did you have something further?
My colleague did give me the language from the ordinance that eliminated supplemental standards in your code. So you won't have to do this again unless the city council changes the code back. So that wouldn't be a concern that maybe should be present. But I understand the issue. Again, if there are any other questions, certainly have appreciated the opportunity for rebuttal and to walk through the language of the code, and hope that you will support this project tonight.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close the public hearing portion, and we will go to a motion and then discussion. I don't know, Commissioner Furman, if you want to make the motion, or I can make it and you can second it. But we have a draft motion. We always make the motion in the affirmative. Then we discuss it, and then, of course, the vote will either be to support that or to deny it. But I do move that the Planning Commission adopt the findings of fact in order as presented in the staff report for case number SU 24-002 and approve the Quick Trip 4254 fueling station special use permit with one amendment to the draft resolution. We will strike Commissioner Rhonda Peters and insert Commissioner Topher Williams. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Overall. Man, you're retired already. All right, so that motion is before us. We have heard all of the testimony. We've reviewed all the documentation. Now I'll invite a discussion by commissioners. And the most important thing, as we all know, is that regardless of how you vote on this, we each have an obligation to state in the record and build a record for why we have come to that conclusion. So I'll start with Commissioner Overall.
I don't have my full thesis formed yet. Thank you, Chair. But I do want to clarify for the record that I was incorrect in terms of that pedestrian crossing. It is half a block past, further north than where all the kids come out, which is right where that vegan bakery is. So I was incorrect, and I also agree that students are not going to go out of their way to get to the crosswalk to then come back when there's another crosswalk that they will try to use or maybe get impatient and not use at all.
Commissioner Furman.
I feel like I agonized over this last time and over the same point. I mean, because I think the primary fuel thing, I won't go down the road on that. I think it's an impossible one to meet right now. So I think this all hinges on whether or not it is the issue of whether or not the double yellow line is the question. I will admit I agonize over it because I think there's a lot of merit to this particular fueling station. There's been a lot of effort to make it benefit in a lot of ways. I also agree there are benefits to having something at this site. Clearly, we've seen some of the emails that came in supporting it. The challenge I have is, I will say that I have a hard time, and there's two parts to this. I have a hard time seeing that, because I think of all the situations, and I don't want to go down a slippery slope, but the double yellow line being enough of a prevention for turning. And then the secondary piece of this, I was thinking about this, and someone can correct me, but one of the things that will prevent coming back is if they have to wait for the median, does the new rules governing a gas station prevent it anyway? So are we here, and this is maybe conjecture, but are we here now rather than waiting because of the window is closing on this version? And that gives me pause as well. The reason the window's closing is because people felt that there was enough of a reason to close that window. So I wish it were clearer that the double yellow line would do it, but I imagine all the scenarios, whether it's wintertime with light dusting of snow, there's all kinds of ways in which it is not clear prevention. And it's the reason that I am disinclined to vote yes. So.
From my point of view, I am surprised. I am a huge advocate for EV charging. The idea of 17 chargers, including 8 superchargers this near my home, is a wonderful thing. But the evidence is that there does not seem to have been any serious consideration of research analysis demonstrating that on the primary fuel, that it really is electricity. And there are some glaring, I think, reasons that it clearly is not. And I am often criticized for defending the staff too much. I think our staff does a wonderful job. I think staff got it wrong this time. I think staff should have insisted that there be more of a logical, reasonable, common sense, evidentiary-based something to come up with why our rule would be 17 versus 16. It just does not seem to be something that is able to be brought forward, substantiated, and I would argue that the 17 chargers, the way defined, is to me the least reasonable, the least compelling way to find that that's the primary fuel. I could have, and I think I listed a whole bunch of reasons that this group and a subsequent court would look at it and go, yeah, that would be much more reasonable than just the number. And I think that is exposed pretty clearly when, if it's just the number, you could have 17 orange electrical cords. And no one could reasonably believe that's what the city council was trying to do. So when you look at that, I find it impossible to come to the conclusion that the primary fuel here is electricity versus a petroleum product, and therefore it is not different. And I think that is, I feel very, very strongly about that. When we turn to clear and simple access, the applicant has a real problem. You are asking 4 of the 6 people here to reverse ourselves based upon what was a thorough hearing the last time on this issue. And again, I'm surprised that there's not a more substantive argument. We pointed out that this statute this ordinance clearly makes us look at the current conditions. And the current conditions do not have a median. Maybe there should be one, but if it's not there, then it's the double yellow line. And I get the argument that double yellow line means it's illegal, and maybe we should think of illegal as what City Council meant when they said prevent. But there's a difference. If anybody has ever cut a corner too quickly, your tire goes up on the curb. You're jumping the curb. If anyone has ever jumped a median, you are talking about a physical obstacle that can create damage, that can strand your vehicle, and that, without question, empirically and logically, prevents clear and easy access. And what we've heard, And Commissioner Buckley, the last time this was considered, he actually provided some information about what he observed in terms of the actual practice that people were engaging in. And it was clear that the current conditions did not prevent. Discouraged, hoped people wouldn't, but did not prevent. And that was the basis of the finding before, and I think that should be the basis of our finding again. And therefore, I don't believe that either of the two exceptions have been met. I would also say that I am still questioning this issue of the circular notion of the principal use and the accessory use, where we say specifically that electric chargers, if they're accessory, they cannot be a fueling station. Well, that's muddy enough that that gives me pause. Most importantly, what City Council was trying to do was prevent gas stations except in narrow circumstances. And those narrow circumstances have to be backed up by evidence, and I'm just not seeing it here. I will merely add that the same concerns last time having to do with incompatibility with the comprehensive plan that are in Chapter 6 and 7 remain. However, I also acknowledge that this EV addition does meet several aspects of the comprehensive plan. And often on a comprehensive plan, we get to pick and choose. I don't like to do that. Either it's consistent with the comprehensive plan or it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. And if there are elements that it is inconsistent with, then I think that remains true in this case. The last thing I was going to say, hard to believe, I'm sure, but we got a lot of different public comment. And I want to say that I thought in terms of public comment, both in support and in opposition, there were some relevant things that I listened to. There were also some things that clearly we cannot listen to. Any argument that we have to listen to the people and enforce a law not yet in effect for this project because it's the right thing to do, I will never agree with that. Right? The law is the law. What was in effect at the time of the application is what must be applied to them. It applies to everyone. It's got to be applied consistently. I just cannot imagine that being a compelling reason. So, on the record, there is zero basis from my perspective on the fact that the Planning Commission subsequently suggested tightening this provision even more, and the City Council has adopted it. Totally irrelevant. And any comment, I think, in that regard, I will not take into consideration. That is all I had to say. I'm curious if any other commissioners want to make comments or put anything on the record before we vote. Commissioner Overall.
It's on for real this time.
Sure.
I will be a yes vote tonight, and the reason for that is that I do believe, and I think that quite respectfully, I think the four got it wrong. I don't know what the discussion was, but I do think they got it wrong. I think it actually kind of defies logic that the City Council meant that preventing clear and simple access did not include making an illegal turn. So that's my view. I also find it very compelling that, given the plain language of it, strict interpretation of, I can't remember the exact wording, but from this site to the Circle K, you couldn't get there without making a couple of turns, and that's obviously not simple or clear. So I do believe that's satisfied. I don't have to get personally to the primary use question, although I think we should punt it for another day and really think about it because the statute really isn't clear.
Commissioner O'Neill.
I appreciate all the comments this evening and all the conversation and the additional things that the applicant has brought to the table this evening. I will likely be a no vote on this because I don't believe that the primary fuel was proven or thought through enough, even though I do think it's a valiant effort to bring that number. It just feels like more. And as far as the 1,000-foot ordinance, the intent of that ordinance, in my mind, and I think in the mind of most of Lakewood, is that we don't want to see gas stations clustered together and so close that they're within that 1,000 feet. And yes, it's not legal maneuvering that folks are doing, and I don't think City Council was supporting illegal driving, but it just is what is happening. So, and you're able to do it. So folks are doing it. It is a habit. It won't be once there's a physical median there. But right now, as the condition is today, and as I understand from the voice of the people of this community, we don't want gas stations this close together. So I'll be a no vote.
Commissioner Gribley on this.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think my buttons work. I don't think they've worked for quite a few meetings now, for what it's worth. I guess my stance is that the primary fueling type has not been adequately expressed as being electric. I don't think there's been enough information presented to make a compelling case that there's going to be more electrical charges here than gas fill-up. So I don't think that's applicable. And then in regards to the traffic conditions, this one was muddier in my mind, but again, basing it on current conditions, I don't see any existing traffic conditions such as a raised median that are preventing clear and simple access to the Circle K station.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know what y'all's first meeting was like, but this was quite exciting way to start my term on Planning Commission. I spent a lot of time before this meeting, especially because it's my first one, reading through the documents from staff and from the applicant as well to try and make sure that I understood exactly what was going on today. And I was, not to toot my own horn here, but I was thrilled to know that I was really familiar with a lot of the things that was presented by everyone here. So I'm really grateful for the thorough assessment. I agree that the primary fuel piece of this is not met. I mean, 16 versus 17, I don't know. I think it sets an odd precedent for us to make a decision based on that, so I'm not comfortable with that being met. In terms of the access piece, that is unclear, I think, in many ways, from what I've come to understand about it. I do understand that there's a difference between the intent of wanting people to follow the law and, the phrase of preventing clear and simple access. I doubt there's anyone in this room that can say they've never pulled an illegal traffic maneuver, right? And so this idea of discouraging a illegal maneuver versus preventing one, I think my understanding is that the way that the street is currently designed does not prevent access. It certainly discourages it. It would be illegal to do it, but it doesn't. It is not preventing someone from being able to do that. I philosophically want more electric charging stations in our community, but my understanding of our responsibility is to address this on the merits, and I'm not sure that it meets the two examples that we have laid out here today.
And because I always have to have the last word, I'm sorry. I think to Commissioner Overall, I absolutely respect that that's a reasonable interpretation that you're making. And I don't think it's necessarily unreasonable for the applicant to make it. But the issue, I think, is going to be, did the commission provide a reasonable basis for interpreting prevent, clear, and simple? And I believe that we have, and that would be something that would be recognized as within our discretion. And that's why, even though there may be other interpretations that could also be reasonable, our obligation is to have a reasonable interpretation that a majority supports. With that, Mr. Medina, I would ask you to call the roll.
Excuse me. Commissioner Furman?
No?
Commissioner Gribble-Unis?
No.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer?
No.
Commissioner O'Neill?
No.
Commissioner Overall?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
No.
Okay, that is 5-1 no.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the application has been denied, but we appreciate everyone's attendance. We'll move on to item number 5, which is approval of the minutes for our January 22nd, 2025 meeting. Hopefully, everyone has had a chance to review those. Were there any corrections, changes, or addition to the minutes? Seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the minutes of the Lakewood Planning Commission for January 22nd, 2025.
I move to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Furman moves to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Gribble-Unis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion passes. The minutes have been approved. Now we move to item 6, which is general business. And here's where we typically talk about our calendar and schedule. And we do have some changes coming up from what we discussed earlier. Mr. Rice, I may just explain what my understanding is, and then you correct me if I'm wrong. We are scheduled to meet again next Wednesday. It is April 9th, and originally the intention had been for that to be the first hearing on both the final staff draft of the comp plan as well as the zoning rewrite. But the consultants are taking a bit longer in preparing the zoning rewrite, so that will only have to do with the comp plan. And we, of course, are hoping that all the members of the public that want to comment on that plan do so. That is an opportunity both on Lakewood Speaks and in person. That would not be a meeting to approve the comp plan. It would simply be the first of 2 hearings, with the second hearing being on the 23rd of April. Also on April 23rd, we would have our first hearing, in theory, on the zoning rewrite, the actual text of the zoning amendment and the attached new zoning map. And it is our hope and expectation that that will be publicly available by the 9th?
The 9th, correct.
So the public, for the tens of thousands of people still listening, please look for that on Lakewood Speaks. You'll have a chance, you'll have 2 weeks to look at that draft before it comes to us in a public hearing, and then you'll have an opportunity on Lakewood Speaks and in person. And then in May, which date is the rewrite?
We're proposing.
Proposing.
And this was one thing that I was going to bring up, but
Oh,
thank you.
go ahead.
We're proposing May 14th or May 21st, and so we'll need to poll the commission about availability and so forth. But that would be the second hearing on the zoning rewrite.
Is there any preferences on, this is May. We're looking at May 14th or 21st?
Correct.
Well, I would prefer the 14th myself, but.
I am not in the state on the 14th.
Okay, would you be on the 21st?
I am on the 21st.
Okay, other commissioners?
Same, I'm going to be in San Francisco on the 14th.
Okay, well, that seems like the 21st is looking like the best second hearing for the zoning rewrite. And we can't guarantee that we're going to be ready to take final action, but that is certainly the hope, I think, of staff, that we would dig in those 2 hearings and then have a recommended zoning rewrite and zoning map sent to the city council for them to begin to pick apart our good work. And then the only other thing that we believe is tentatively scheduled is May 7th.
May 7th, correct.
And May 7th, we anticipate being an application for a major site plan at 777 Yarrow. I will simply note that this is a project that has had a lot of attention over time. It would be my hope that we could conduct that hearing and render a decision that night, but we simply don't know how long it'll go. And I would ask commissioners to think about alternatives. Do we want to try to have another date somewhat more distant in time, or simply come back? I don't know technologically if it's possible to come back the next night and finish, or do you have advice on that, Mr. Rice?
Typically, I would need to consult with Lauren, and she's sitting right here, so she'll help me. Technically, the commission generally meets on Wednesdays, right? So to hold a Thursday hearing is kind of out of character. Could they do that if they announce it at a public hearing?
I think it would be a recess, but yeah, Ms. Stanek.
I think she's got to look at the
And you don't have to answer off the top of your head.
Right.
We can wait for that, but I think that is we'll need to get direction from staff as to whether it would be appropriate to recess the hearing and reconvene it.
And why don't we provide that instead of trying to find you an answer right now? And what we're also looking at is you'll expect an email from Jaime to confirm the 21st or ask your availability. And then we're going to ask, what are we doing, 2 months out? So we'll ask for additional dates in June and July.
All the way till the end of the July.
Yeah.
I want to gauge availability.
Okay.
And just so everyone knows, I do have an answer, and I can put this in writing later. But according to the rules and regulations, the commission rules do state, section 5.2, that regular meetings of the commission will generally be held at 7 p.m. the first and third Wednesday of each month, and has some additional language, except as otherwise designated by the commission. Changes in meeting times and dates shall be posted with the agenda for such meetings. So if the commission did vote to schedule a regular meeting on the Thursday, May 8th, essentially, you could do that. It would need to be posted, and I know it's because it's set one of the provisions. We're just going to go to the next provision. I know this would not be a special meeting, but I'm just letting you know that it does state somewhere else that no special meeting shall be called with less than 48 hours notice to all commissioners. I would hesitate to, if we didn't notice it, I would hesitate to continue it to the next day, recess and continue to the next day. So my preference would either be that we notice it as potentially the 2 days, understanding if we don't need the second day, that's fine, or continuing it to a Wednesday, which is the general meeting time.
And the difficulty with the following Wednesday is that, again, is May 14th.
Yeah.
Right.
So we would lose 2 commissioners, and potentially we might be down a commissioner still. So is there a reaction to, and I don't know if the lights did, were people seeking recognition on this issue? No?
I don't. I'm still working
Commissioner
out
Williams.
my how to work all of the buttons here. For the Thursday piece, I'm fine doing a Wednesday and Thursday meeting if that's the case. My newbie question here is, for example, the 9th next week. That's another one I'm out of town for work. Is that one where we can call in on, or no? Or I'm still a little fuzzy on where the remote participation falls in.
That is actually a fantastic question. And I believe the answer is, Ms. Stanek, correct me if I'm wrong, because the comprehensive plan is a legislative action and not a quasi-judicial action, we can have you participate remotely. And in addition, we're not even taking a vote on that one. So that would be absolutely permissible.
Great, thank you. In terms of your original question, though, about May 7th, the Wednesday, and Thursday, the 8th, I'm personally comfortable with that, since that's what you were actually asking.
Yeah. I think sometimes people would prefer to just plow through to 3 o'clock in the morning and get it done. I worry that that's not.
I wouldn't.
All right. So it seems like maybe a general sense that if we, as we get closer, maybe notice it for 2 subsequent days. And if we need the second day, great. If we don't, then great as well. I see Commissioner O'Neill's light on, but maybe that's Commissioner Furman.
I did have my light on, but for a totally separate purpose. I turned
Okay.
it on separate from this issue.
I think we're ready to move on.
Well, I was just going to say, my intent is pending, I think, the official version of the election, I think, which is April 4th. I'll resign before the 9th, just so you know. So I'll send a letter of resignation next week. And I thank you all. It's been good serving with you on the Planning Commission, so I appreciate it. And thanks to those who supported the election as well.
And you're going to have the opportunity to look at the zoning rewrite and say, Planning Commission was confused by this, let's fix it. And we would appreciate it.
And in some ways, I think it's good to only see it after you all have done your work. So,
thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Rice, anything further?
Nothing from staff.
All right. Thank you all. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting 1 minute before 10, 9:59. Thank you.